Bali book, both your artworks are objects laid on a flat surface. Did you randomly place them, or do they connect somehow or fit like a puzzle?
Yeah, they seemingly placed randomly. I wanted them to look random, but I had a lot of time, spent a lot of time and trouble arranging them to be random because I had a certain rule for myself that not one object was allowed to go too close to the other one. So they had to be evenly spaced, absolutely evenly spaced. So although everything's highly planned in these things, but nothing is really planned. I come and I just get a whole lot of objects and put them on a piece of paper or something like that, and I just said, okay, that's it. And then I had a method of preparing to do the drawings, because I had to draw these things out before and then to paint them. And I have all sorts of tricks that I developed in doing that the easiest.
So, why did you specifically want to use watercolor? Like, what made you attracted to using watercolor?
Okay. I like that question. It's a very difficult medium to use. Very, very difficult. You can't make a mistake with it. And what I liked about it is that it's not that you don't read the paint as an object. So if you look at oil paint or egg tempera paint, which I used before that and so on, the paint sits on the surface like an object. With watercolor, it stains the surface. It's there, but it's not really there. They aren't real. They must look unreal. And watercolor was the most unreal medium I could use to span that reality and non-reality, that tension between the two.
Where do you find or get the objects that you paint?
They have a bit of a history behind that. When I did my PhD, I did a lot of research on the histories of Southern Africa, the colonial histories. And then I started visiting places, particularly in Botswana, and following their roots. And then I started picking up all those objects along the way. Lying in the middle of nowhere were these objects. And I'm very interested in material culture, human material culture, and I'd pick up some of them. I put in, I didn't pick up everything, not like a tin of bully beef. But it's sort of junk. It's throwaway stuff, junk that has been discarded by human beings, and I was interested in that. Not only humans, also nature, the bits of branches, pods on, and so on. And that everything belonged together in one world and in one frame.
You're known for finding inspiration in objects because they tell stories. What's the most meaningful object you've painted, and what's the story behind it?
Actually, I fell in love with all of those objects. In fact, the other day I threw a lot of them away for the first time. Yeah, I kept them for years and years and years, and I thought, no, so they've got to move out now. I think the story in it is actually me painting it while I'm doing it, and me trying to grapple with how am I going to paint this thing.
So, what connection did you have with these objects? What drew you to them to paint them?
It's a fascination, you're right, from childhood, a fascination. When I was a kid and walking around, I was in the Boy Scouts and we used to go and wander around. In those days, you could walk anywhere. And you've come across an old derelict farmhouse and you find stuff lying around there. And that always interested me because I always wondered who lived there, what did they do in their lives, and so on. You try to map and put this thing together. And that fascinates me, that somebody was there and they left that there, and why.
I'm also curious on your view of what is an object, because I've seen you've painted a few things that were not inanimate at some point.
Yeah, insects. Well, I suppose as much as an object as that twig or that spoon, it's also just landed there by chance. These things also they landed there by chance. I suppose that's why I did those compositions. That if you look at all those Dutch still life paintings, they painted valuable things, silver and porcelain and even fruit and so on. And here I'm painting things that have no value, they've been discarded. And I think for me there's a significance in that. You'll see, for example, in that corner there, the old turd, and down here as well. And then there's something from an ox wagon that pulls wood together, that bolts it together, twigs. squashed up tins that comes from, I think, pap from Botswana, cowbells, wooden spoons, bits of a map. The map, of course, is of significance of mapping out the land.
So, what are the emotions that you feel when you get into the space of painting, and what does your artwork mean to you?
Sure. I think I'm very attached to what I do. I get terribly involved with things, and I dig myself so deeply into them that they become part of my life. So in the end, I think in a similar way, it grows on you, and you become part of it, and I become very attached to them. But if somebody wants to buy it, fine, they must move it out. I need the money, I think. But I don't paint with feeling in an expressionistic way. I never have. I think this is, for me, an expressionistic way as such, but it's about observation. And that's what I like. It's the art of observation, of looking at things. I think there's something that I would like to say about what I'm interested in making art. And these objects on the table, which I specially prepared and put them over here, are closely related to that and are repeated in those works. So some of them are the objects that I painted. But I used to frequent an area around Mossel Bay, where we went on holiday for many years. And just above the beach, in the first sand dunes, behind the first sand dunes, where the ground gets harder, there were great workshops that I found. You can see somebody sat there chopping stones and so on. And then I recognized what these things were, that they were stone tools. Some of them are arrowheads, some of them are spearheads, some of them are hand axes and so on. These were our ancestors from very far, very long ago. What we share with them is 5 fingers and 2 hands, and with that we make everything. You pick these things up, and these are all functional objects that work perfectly fine and probably still would work. I'm sure this one would still work. The one was perfectly symmetrical, perfectly, absolutely beautifully symmetric, and you can see the whole edge had been carefully chipped away to create that shape. And then I think to myself, why, when this fulfills the function of piercing the animal, piercing the hide, but why have some of them got so much extra work in that's involved? And that work is effort, time and effort. I don't know if you've ever made Christmas presents or whatever for your grandparents. You don't make a piece of junk that you put together in 5 seconds flat for your grandmother. What do? You invest your entire, everything that you can into it. And I think it's that value that you put into things because you put in yourself in it. And I think there's something quite magical about that, but I think it's a type of a value that I think we have somehow lost. Maybe not completely, I don't want to make any wide statements that we lost it, but I think that's important, that you invest in yourself. And so I think this is what I share with these people, living so long ago, and with those paintings in particular, hold that I put myself in. It took me hours and hours to do. There was no way I'd be satisfied with a sloppy job. And I suppose that's the point I want to make is, why do we make art? What is the purpose of making art? I have no idea. There are very many. Can be conceptual ideas and so on and so forth, can be expressionistic and so on. But I think that you're also investing something of yourself as a human being, something very human in making these. And I think that is, for me, an important point that I want to make here with this whole thing.